don't know if you know, Sam, but I'm an advisory teacher.
Right.
Okay, so what I do is I work across all the schools in the island, and I go in and support and advise. And I don't know if you know, we set up Grade Busters back in 2003. So in actual fact now, we've had contact with hundreds of children now, hundreds of children. And we've seen massive, massive improvements. What tends to happen, Sam, as long as the kids keep coming, there is improvement. But if their attendance is quite patchy, then that's when it becomes tricky.
Yeah.
So it makes a difference if they can be consistent. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. So the whole purpose of this today is so that parents who want to give if they want to give their child the best quality education, and if you want them to reach their potential. Now, very often this is beyond preconceived expectations to ensure that we avoid that summer learning loss, which we just hindered to just now. Because of course, you know, over the summer period, a child can lose up to 2.6 months of mathematics, can be lost over that summer break. And also, if each summer this is constantly happening, by the time the child gets to year 7, which is age 11 or 12, students who have experienced summer learning loss over those years, on average, are 2 years behind their peers. So if we can, you know, put things in place now to prevent that, then that's the best way. Okay, Sam, so what I'm going to do now is I've got Ricky and Colin who are on the live Facebook feed. Guys, if you want to join the webinar, all you have to do is click on the link. But if you're watching on the live Facebook, you're not going to see everything on my screen, so it might not all make a lot of sense. But guys, you're very welcome. If you click into the link, you can register and join the live webinar. Okay, guys, so what I'm going to do for you, Sam, is I'm going to just share my screen with you. All right, so that you can see what I've got. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. So Sam, can you see those algebraic equations on your screen now?
Yeah, I can.
Brilliant. Okay, so now what I'm going to do by the end of this webinar, you are going to be able to show your child how to calculate these with ease. Now you might be thinking to yourself, oh, I'm not sure he's going to be able to do these. Even my own mathematical knowledge might be, it might be challenging it. So you might think to yourself, I'm not sure, but by the end of this webinar, you will be able to teach your child similar calculations. And these calculations are very similar to the ones that you would be expected to take in your GCSE, in your age 16 examinations. So, okay then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through now the 3 areas that I'm going to cover on this webinar. The first area I'm going to be covering is about to discover the 10 principles. I'm going to share with you the 10 principles that your child, once they understand these 10 principles, they will be able to pass their exams at 16 years old. What is tending to happen in schools is children are experiencing hundreds of memory tricks, and these memory tricks don't really help the kids with understanding. So in a minute, I'm going to share with you those 10 principles. If you want to know what those 10 principles are, Michael, I can see you've joined me on the Facebook Live. If you want to click in the link, you are very welcome to come and see my screen. You can't see my screen on the webinar, but do come and join us if you want. The second part of this webinar is going to be about harnessing the power of how we learn. And what we can do as a parent is we can embrace these to support our child. And then thirdly, I'm going to talk about the power to name things. And I'm going to show you this 4th principle, how you can accelerate your child's knowledge and understanding in mathematics. So first of all, let's think now about our own educational experiences when we were at school. I know when I think about my sons, when he comes home from school with the homework, I can see that it's filled with memory tricks he has to use to work out his mathematics homework. And of course, with my role as an advisory teacher, I have the privilege of observing schools across the island. And of course, there I also witness many children using memory tricks. Maybe you can remember some of these yourself. What I'm going to do, Sam, is I'm just going to share my screen with you. Oh, hello, Mike has joined us on the webinar. That's fantastic, Mike. Brilliant to see you here. George, I can see you're on the live Facebook. If you want to come and join us on the webinar and see what's on my screen, click on the link and come in. So what I'm going to do now, Mike, oh, it's not just Mike, it's awesome, Mike. Mike and Sam, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen with you. Here we go. And here are the calculations I said that we are going to be, you're going to be able to easily teach your child, no matter how old they are, 5, 6, 7, or 8 or 9, by the end of this webinar. So let's just think about some memory tricks. Maybe you recognize some of these. What about this one, for example? Do you remember this one? Criss, cross, smiley face. Maybe your child or you have experienced this one. Or there's another one such as up the corridor, or up the stairs, along the corridor. Oh, hang on, wait a minute. Was it along the corridor and up the stairs? Well, I can't really remember, but you see what I mean, don't you? That the reality is that these are tricks. And if we can't understand the maths behind them, then if we're in an exam situation, how can our children make connections when they come across something challenging? Firstly, they need to remember the trick. And if they can't remember that, then they are stuck. And of course, maybe yourselves, you may very well have remember things like BODMAS, BIDMAS. I don't know if that rings any bells to you. But the reality is, tricks do not aid understanding. And, you know, I just need to ask a 12-year-old, can you tell me what addition means? And very often their response will be, oh, it means add. But the reality is, that's its name. It's not what the symbol means, and it's not what the symbol's telling us to do. So, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on to explain exactly what those symbols mean. So, as I said, I want to give you the 10 principles. Now, when I say these principles, you will be familiar with half of them. But what I want you to ask yourself is, does your child or you know what these actually mean? So the first 5, you're going to think, yay! But just ask yourself, do you actually know what they mean? So the 10 principles that we teach that underpin all mathematics, so your child, once they understand these, will be able to pass their GCSE exam. They are addition, subtraction, equals, multiplication, division, denomination, proof, symbols tell you something, look and hear the logic, and the last one is ratio. Now, let me just explain those first 3 principles. Of course, addition, subtraction, equals, you've heard those before, but what do they mean to our children? Well, what we need to get our children to understand is that they are instructions. They're like verbs. They are telling us what to do. So what we do is we use specific phrases. So when we see the addition symbol, we say, get, set, to get. When we see the subtraction symbol, we say, get, set, to take. And when we see the equal symbol, it tells us to count how much is there. So these are 3 simple phrases that help the child understand that they are verbs. So once they understand that these are instructions and they're telling them what to do, this really does aid problem solving in due course. Okay, guys, so are we all okay? We've got those 10 principles. We know what they are. And once they understand these, they can pass their GCSE or their when they're 16 years old exams. So let's now move on, because I want to talk to you about to harness the power of how we learn. So if I think about myself, my own education as a child, I can remember at 7 years old, 7 or 8 years old, I can remember being given, and I'm sure you'll remember these, a big 100 block. It was a wooden block with 100 units in it. And then you had the rods, with the 10 units, and then you had the little centimetre cube units. And I can distinctly remember at 7 years old, I was looking at these objects and trying to understand the connection between the objects and those abstract symbols in my exercise book. And for the life of me, I could not make this connection. And the other thing I know, and then the other thing that would happen is the following lesson, those objects would disappear and I'd be given new objects, maybe buttons or counters, or I'd be given apples or plastic teddy bears. And of course, also in my role as an advisory teacher, I go in and see this in schools. And what happens is the children think it is different maths and they struggle to make the connection, just as I did when I was a child. I didn't realize that. It's only having become an adult and observed hundreds of maths lessons have I realized what the issue can be for many children. So what does this tell us? It tells us we need consistency so that our children have time to make secure connections. Let me give you an example. Imagine if I was teaching you music. Today, let's say I was teaching music. So today I'm going to teach you using the flute. And then tomorrow we're going to learn the same music, but actually we're going to teach it to you on a trumpet. And then the following day we're going to use a piano. And then the day after we're going to use a harp, and so on and so on. Well, we wouldn't do that, would we? What we do is we become familiar and consistent with an instrument. And in due course, once we are confident with these skills, then and only then do we then transition onto another musical instrument. And this is where we need to be very careful with children, that we move them on too quickly with a myriad of different objects. And this is actually something the government curriculum encourages. It tries to encourage this as much as possible. But the reality is that our children need time to process first. So what we have done is we use specific objects that we have carefully chosen, and we call these concrete objects. And the objects that we've chosen, I mean, they're not concrete, they're physical objects. The reason why we've chosen the specific objects is because they're non-threatening. The children have no real connection to them, and they aren't a distraction to them because they don't have any pretty patterns on them and things like that. So here we go. There's a whole load of counters. I don't know if you can see this on your screen, but these counters, as you can see, we've got halves and quarters there. They just pop out. This is what our students use. And the other concrete object that we use is what we call the grid and the store. And this is what it looks like. So here's the grid. This is where we do the maths. And underneath, you see the store. And this is where our students can manipulate kinesthetically the instructions and the objects at the same time. So what they need then is time to become familiar with these objects. So what I want to do is show you how you can do this at home with your child. And I want to show you how I introduce this at the earliest stage. Now, just before I share my screen to show you, Patrick and George, it's awesome to see you on the live Facebook. If you want to see what's happening in the webinar and on my screen, you're going to have to click on the link and join us, because I'm afraid you can't see what's happening in the actual webinar, and it will make more sense. You can carry on listening if you like, but if you want to see what's happening on the screen, please click on the link and join the webinar, and you can see everything in action. Okay, guys, so for those of you who are in the webinar, I'm now going to share my screen with you again, because I want to show you how we do this at the earliest stage. How do I introduce these first three principles that I've talked about? So as you can see on the screen here now, here's the concrete objects. You have the grid, which is where we do the maths, and the store. And in the store, you can see I've already got my counters. On the left-hand screen, on the left-hand corner of your screen, the abstract symbols are going to pop up now, so they're going to tell us what to do. Let's find out what we've got to do. Here we go. It's telling us to get 6 counters. So I'm going to carefully count my 6 counters and slide them onto the grid. My next instruction is going to come up on the left-hand side, and here we have the subtraction symbol. So with the children, we use the phrase get, set, to take. And they know that they are reaching for the grid. So it's a kinesthetic, it's an action, because this symbol is a verb. It's telling us to do something. The next abstract symbol tells us 1. And as you can see, I've removed 1 counter from the grid. My next instruction is get, set, to get. So the children then reach for the store. How many are we going to now get? Here we go. The abstract symbol tells us 3. And there we go. 3 counters are now on the grid. This symbol tells us to count how much is there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So can you see now how we do this at the absolute earliest stage? There we go. I'm just going to unshare my screen. This is how we do this at the earliest stage. And can you see how crystal clear it is? And we want the children to get to this stage where it becomes as easy as they breathe. Because as you notice, as I was showing you on my screen, we're tapping into all 3 learning stimuli. Visual, you can see how visual it is on the screen. It's there for them all to see. Audio, what we're doing is we're saying out loud, we're talking through the instructions, and we're verbalizing what we have to do. And of course, it also taps into the 3rd one, kinesthetic. They've got to actually physically move the objects around. So when you're using visual, audio, and kinesthetic, no matter what style learner you are, no child gets left behind. Okay, guys, so let's move on now. Next, let me show you how we can apply this to what can be perceived as too challenging for some 11-year-olds, all right? Some people would deem this to be. So what we tend to do is put limits. Oh, brilliant. George has come to join us. Hi, George. Fantastic. I hope you can see your screen, all right? If you want to unmute yourself, you can, George, but I'm just going to carry on for the minute. So fabulous, George. Wonderful to see you. Thank you for clicking on the link and joining the live webinar. So George now can see what's going on in my screen. So in a minute, I'm going to share my screen a bit more with you, George. But let's just first of all think about the limits we put on ourselves, on our own belief system. Because I often hear children, but actually not just children, I hear adults saying things like, oh, I can't do maths, I'm rubbish at it, I'm no good. So where do these limits come from? Well, they come from us externally, don't they? They come from our schools, our teachers, from society, from our parents. We even put limits on ourselves. They come from everywhere. And I think actually we are probably the worst at putting our limits on ourselves. So the reality is, if everyone taught from first principles rather than following standard expectations, then surely everyone could achieve their best. Because what we believe at Gradebusters is we believe in education without limits. I don't believe you can put a cap on any child's potential. Who's to say that just because of their age, they should only be taught up to a particular content? No child should ever be limited to their potential. So what can we do as parents? What I'm going to show you now is I'm going to explain to you the principle of denomination so that you can do this with your child. What I'm just going to do now is I'm just going to share my screen with you again. So if I could just pop you up, here we go. So now, George, now you've joined us, you can have the whole effect now. So I'm just going to share my screen. Here we go. Just pop that up from current. Here we go. So what we just did, George, was we just went through that. So I'm just going to slip through. Okay. So this is how we teach denomination. And just now, George, I don't know if you noticed, I was showing we use the object counters, and on your screen in front of you, you can see a very plain and simple counter. What I say to the kids is, I say to the kids, have you ever wondered why your name is your name? Why did your parents call that name? I mean, why did they call me Heidi? They could have called me any name. I mean, George, surely you could have been called anything at all. Well, any of us could, couldn't we, really, when you think about it? But have you ever wondered why a counter is called a counter? Well, the reality is, the reason why it's called a counter is because one day somebody said, this object, I'm going to put these sounds together and it's going to be called counter. Hello, counter. How do you do? Nice to meet you. But I tell you what, I'm really bored of calling this counter. Just before I go, and I just want to say hello to Tisha. She's on live Facebook. Tisha, if you want the whole webinar experience, click on the link and you'll be able to see what's on my screen. So I look at this object and I say to the kids, you know what, kids, I'm bored of calling this counter. I'm going to call it something else. I know, I'm going to call it X. This is its new name. Hello, X, how do you do? Now, can you see what's happening here? I am giving children the power to name things. Sometimes I give the power to them, but sometimes I have the power to name things and they have to go with what I suggest that name to be. So this is our new object. It's now called X. And some of our students like to write the name in pencil on the counter so that if they don't actually forget it, which is a very good thing to do. So let me show you now where we take it from here. Here we have our concrete objects, the grid and the store. And what you will notice on my store is I've already got some X's. I don't know if you can see that in your right-hand bottom corner. If you just look very carefully, I'm not sure if you're using a phone, it might be a very small picture for you, but there are some X's. So let's find out what our abstract symbols are telling us to do. And these symbols are going to pop up now on the left-hand side of your screen. Here we go. It's telling us to get 7 of those things called X. So I'm going to carefully count them in the store, and on they go onto the grid. And I push them on in one go. My next instruction tells me to get, set, to take. So our students reach for the grid. Remember, it's an instruction, it's an action, it's telling you to do something. 1 of those things called X. And there you go, it comes down to the store. My next instruction is, subtraction again. Get, set, to take. And the abstract symbol tells us 3 of those things called X. And there we go. And then, of course, here comes our symbol. Count how much is on the grid. 1, 2, 3. 3 of those things called X. Hello, Tisha's come to join us. Welcome to the webinar, Tisha. Okay, guys, so there we go. So where do we go from here? Can you see how still it's the same principles of the way I taught you originally when we began? But now we're using X's. So where would I take this power to name things? Well, let's have a look. Here's our object. We called it X, didn't we? And I say to children, you know what, guys? I'm really bored of calling this X. I'm going to give it a new name. What shall I call it? I know. I think I'm going to call it X squared Y. Hello, X squared Y. How do you do? I have the power to name things. And this is the principle of denomination. So here we go. What would we do with this? Here are our instructions. Hello, Bernard. Lovely to join you on the live Facebook. If you want to join the webinar, you just click on the link if you want to see what's on the screen. Fabulous. And also, who's joined us? Helen. Lovely to meet you, Helen. Thank you for joining us, Helen Dodd. So, guys, as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, we've got 5 of those things called X squared Y. Hi, Paul Dorrington. If you want to see what's on my screen, click on the link and join the live webinar. So you're going to look at that symbol and can you notice in my store, guys, I've got my X squared Y's already there. I'm going to count them and then I'm going to push them on in one go. There we go. I'm now going to look for my next instruction. My instruction is get, set, to take. How many am I going to take? 2 of those things called X squared Y. And there they are. We remove them from the store. I'm now going to look for my next instruction. Get, set, to get. The children know this is an action. We're going to reach for the store. And the abstract symbols tell me 1 of those things called X squared Y. So as you can see, the counter X squared Y just went on the grid. Here comes my next instruction. Count how much is there. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of those things called X squared Y. Okay, guys, so can you just see how powerful this system is? At the beginning, I said we'd be able to do a calculation like this, and that's exactly what we've just done, isn't it? Something very similar to this. So what have we done on this webinar? I have demonstrated to you and pointed out what are the things we can do to accelerate our child's learning. Well, I've shared with you the 10 principles and what they are. We've talked about the fact that tricks don't aid understanding. And the fact is that if we teach through understanding, children then can make connections. We've discovered using those 3 stimuli, audio, visual, kinesthetic, if we tap into those 3 all the time, no child gets left behind. We've also talked about consistency and how powerful this is, that they are able to do things as easily as they breathe. Because we know kids need time to process. And I've also shown with you that 4th principle, denomination, the power to name things. And of course, I would love you now to be able to share those things with your own children and to discover actually how brilliant they are as mathematicians. So guys, at this point, is there anybody who wants to ask any questions? Anybody at all? So we're completely off live air now, and it's over to you guys. Anybody who has any questions, anybody who would like to ask anything, if you can unmute yourself or wave at me or something if you've got a question, or if there's just anything that you wanted to share at all. Maybe you are finding things, particular things at school with your child that you think actually they could do with more support, or is there anything at all that resonated with you in that webinar? I know some of you weren't here right at the start, and I can see George has got his gorgeous son with him. Do you want to say hello? Hi, George.
Hi. Heidi, I just wanted to know what age group would you recommend starting your program from?
Right, any person, any child can start from 5 years upwards. I would recommend this from 5 to 12 years old. It will sit perfectly, because if they're 5 years old, 6 or 7, they do as much as they can and then they can move on to the next principle. But what is happening is they are constantly hearing it. You are exposing them to it. Now, I don't know, George, if you were here at that point in the webinar, but I was talking about, I don't believe we have a right to cap any child's potential. How can I say that your child isn't ready for long division? Your child isn't ready for denomination. Your child isn't ready for proof. Your child isn't ready for these things. I can guarantee you your child is. And what we have a phrase that everybody can do maths. It's the way you are taught. That's what's key to it. So what I've shown you today, I have 5-year-olds in my center that can absolutely follow those abstract symbols. They know what those symbols mean. And of course, I also have 12-year-olds that are actually, they've been in the schooling education for some time now, and they don't necessarily even understand what addition, subtraction, times, or equals mean. They might be able to get the answers right. They might be able to get the answers right when they get the calculations, but what lacks is the understanding. And very often, George, I have many parents that say to me, my child was really good at maths in primary school, which if you're in England, that's between 5 and 11 years old. But suddenly when they move to secondary school, they suddenly think, well, they're not as good as they were. And the parents can't understand why that is. And the reason is because they've learned to memorize a lot of things. They've learned a lot of tricks to remember. And the reality is they don't have that understanding. And if they did have that understanding from the word go, then, I mean, the world's their oyster. They can read, any child that comes through our system at Gradebusters absolutely can do A-level maths. I wouldn't dream of them not. But it's amazing as well how many parents say to me, well, my child got an A, or now the scoring system has changed, is level 9 as the top grade. They say, but they've gone to A-level maths, but they just can't do it. It's beyond them. And the reality is that child has been very able to remember things, and they've come up with their own little tricks. But the reality is they haven't understood the maths. So, George, sorry, I gave you a very, very long-winded answer there. But any age between 5 and 12 years old, this would be absolutely ideal for.
Perfect.
We do have other courses as well for other ages. What age child are you thinking of?
Well, my son's 6 years old now.
Brilliant. Do you know what? He is at the perfect age, because what will happen is you'll be able to show him what the abstract symbols mean. What is the massive language? Because what is very often happening in schools, and this is what the government encourage, they encourage at a very young age, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, to introduce maths through real life, through a myriad of objects. But the problem is they're not teaching the children what maths means. They're not teaching the children what the language is. And your son, if he understands these 10 principles that underpin all maths, there is nothing that's ever going to hold him back in his education.
And you go through all of these in your video series?
Sorry, I missed that, George.
You go through all of these 10 principles in your video series?
Yeah, what you've got here is, if you want to have a look, on the Zoom chat, you've got the URL if you want to go and have a look, if you're interested, obviously. And what we have, it depends which one you do. We have 2 courses you can do at home. We've got the Kickstart course. And what that does, that will do the principles, addition, subtraction, equals, multiplication and division. That's your first 5. So you are halfway there. But if you want to take it a step further, the next package after that is called Kick On. And it's the Kick On one where they're going to be exposed using those principles. We'll take it to long multiplication, long division, fractions of a quantity, simple equations, I mean, it just goes on. What we've designed here on this Kick On course is this is actually 7 years of arithmetic education put into 10 weeks. And if you follow that whole process, and if you do all the activities, what it comes with as well is what's the important part about it is that what you will get with it is a call with me twice a week. Okay, it's entirely up to you whether you want to be at those calls, but those calls, those meetings are for me to talk through anything that if you've got any questions, any uncertainty. It's also a time to celebrate your child's brilliance, because the first thing we do is fix children's self-esteem. But I'm hoping your 6-year-old already is feeling he's great, which is brilliant. But unfortunately, I come across 6-year-olds that are already having self-doubt. So the first thing we're going to do is fix their self-esteem and their confidence. So what you get is you get 2-week calls with me personally, not anybody else. I will be there every step of the way. There are, gosh, I'm just trying to think how many videos there are in the Kick On. I think it is, let me just quickly check for you. Here we go. You're going to get over 70 videos. What it is, you get a video released to you daily, and it's entirely up to you how quickly you get through the modules. There are 10 modules. That pace is guided by you and your child, but they will be released to you regularly, so you can go as fast as you like or as slow as you like. It's completely guided by you and the pace of your child. That's what's important. So there are, and you'd be given, there's over 400 math statements, items and questions to work through. You get your answer booklet with it. You get your weekly calls twice a week with me to go through anything, talking through the principles. I will also be sharing with you other knowledge, all about how to improve your son's retention of knowledge, and all the, I mean, I've been working in this industry for 20 years, and for me it's a chance to share 20 years of my experience with you. So I will be doing those on those 2 weekly calls. You also get the opportunity to be in a private Facebook chat where I've already got other parents that have signed up, and this is where we share personal content. It's amazing what other parents go through. I've got a parent at the moment who's on my Kickstart course, and she's also going to transfer onto the Kick On course. She's doing it actually with her children. Now they're 12 and 13 years old. And the reason why she's embarked on it is because she's saying, you know, for her, Maths Weekly is, in their family, is quite a challenging time. They've got children crying over their homework. And what she's saying is, she feels that her children have experienced a myriad of different teaching techniques, which is what happens to all our children. Because the reality is, your child's mathematical learning will be dependent on the teacher they are with. Now, if you have a really confident, passionate teacher about maths that year, then brilliant, you're on to winner. But in our education system, you cannot guarantee that from year after year. in my advisory role, when I was in a school, I was in a year 6, which is 11-year-olds. And what they do in this school is they split the classes into 4 sets. You've got set 1, 2, 3, and 4. Set being the lower ability and set 1 being the higher ability. And I went in on the same lesson, the same day. I went from each lesson in the same year group, and they were doing division. And each teacher in their own classroom was teaching division differently. Now, that raised a lot of questions for me, because I'm thinking, what if a child is in set 2 or set 3 or 4 and they're doing really well, and then they've been asked to move up a set? Well, hang on a minute. They are now going to have to adapt to a completely different way of teaching it, a different language. They're not even using similar language or similar techniques. So, you know, it raises a lot of questions. And the reality is that's what's happening to our children through their entire learning system. But what we provide is a consistent approach so that they become, they absolutely get it. They become secure, so that once they've got this, they can apply it. When they're in the classroom, they go, oh yeah, Heidi explained that symbol. I know what that means. I can use the power to name things. I understand the principle of denomination. But actually, schools don't teach these principles like this. Now, the other thing is, George, what you might want to do, or any of you, Helen or Sam, if you want to get some more information, you can also get my 3 free videos. I've got 3 free videos on division, which you're very welcome to access. I'll ask Kevin to pop he's just going to pop the URL in the Zoom chat. So if you want to access more materials, you're very welcome. George, did you have any other questions for me, or is that kind of, yeah?
That's pretty much answered everything. Thank you.
Brilliant. And do you feel your son would benefit from it?
Yeah, definitely. Because like you said, you know, last year when he was in reception, the maths was a little bit more full on, whereas this year it seems like they're just putting all their efforts into the language side, and the maths is kind of lacking a little bit. So, like you said, it's a luck of the draw from year to year. So something for the summer holidays to keep them on par. This sounds ideal.
Yeah, and I mean, bless my own children. I put them through something every summer since they were 5 years old. And I can't tell you the difference, because the facts are, the statistics, if you go onto Oxford Learning, they will tell you if a child, by the time they get to 11, 12 years old, students who have experienced summer learning loss, if they've done nothing through the summer holidays, are on average 2 years behind their peers. So the reality isn't just about this summer, you know, it's that ongoing thing to keep your child ahead of the game. And I think it's more about confidence and emotional development. When he realizes that he can do it, then, you know, once they have that confidence and ability, you know, it's limitless, to be honest. And that's what I believe in, education without limits. So George, I really hope you embrace this opportunity. I did some webinars, I think it was 2 weeks ago. That package I had out is closed and gone. So when I say these things are available, this will only be available for a short time, because once the course starts, then it leads the thing. So George, I'm really hoping you're going to join me with your son, and it would be amazing to watch him. Absolutely, you know, the sky's the limit. Lovely to meet you, George, and I really appreciate your time being here.
No worries.
Fabulous. And well done for being brave and clicking in. Some people they don't want to go in. Anybody else? Helen or Sam or Mike, did either of you? You don't have to show your face if you don't like. You can just say something. Maybe, I don't know whether I should unclick Sam for her, because she said, Sam, oh, hang on, have I?
Still here.
Sam, I've just unmuted
I'm here.
you. Good, hooray. I've just unmuted you because I know you're not sure how to do that. We didn't quite work that out. Sam, have you got any questions, my dear? Anything I can do to help?
No, I mean, it definitely all makes sense, and I think I'm definitely going to give it a go over the holidays. You know, I completely understand, you're right in what you're saying. When they do teach them homework one night for maths, will be completely different to the other night for maths, and it's learning in a different way, and it is very confusing. So yeah, I think the basic being able to grasp the basic concept is missing. Mm-hmm. So they throw all these things at them, and you know, while some children can do that, some children can't, and the ones that can't get left behind, and that's a concern of mine.
Do you know what, Sam, you've shared my pain, because I see this in the classrooms time and time again, and it breaks my heart, because what is happening is children aren't being given enough time to process. And the problem is, and teachers will express this concern themselves, I'm not saying anything that they don't know, but because of the government curriculum, because of Ofsted and all these things in place, teachers are pressured to move on. They've got to have shown they've covered this, and this. But the reality is, if these teachers just stuck to these 10 principles, they wouldn't have to do all these fancy kind of different things, and it would just completely cut the curriculum down and make it much more manageable. But I understand the constraints teachers are under, and this is why, Sam, it's so important for me to reach out to parents, because I want parents to be able to take control and feel that they can make such a difference to their own child's education. So Sam, that would be awesome. It would be brilliant to see you and Cameron. It's Cameron, isn't it? On if join. Like I said, do you know which one you're thinking of doing? Would you think of doing Kickstart or the Kick On? Which one are you thinking about?
I haven't actually looked at either of them yet. Okay. I just want to have a little listen today, but I think probably, to be honest, start from the basic one, be Kickstart.
Yeah, do you know, that's a brilliant place to start, because once you've done that, you can progress on to the next one, and it will lead on. So see how that goes. I know Cameron will be brilliant at it, but make sure, Sam, you do it, because once I finish doing my webinars, it will go just like the previous one. Some people said to me, I was in the Gradebuster Study Centre yesterday, and a parent said, but you had this course out. I said, yeah, I'm sorry, we've done it. It's moved on. The prices are different. Everything's changed. So they were absolutely mortified. People seem to think when I say it's closed, it's finished, they don't seem to believe me for some reason. But that's what we do. We get our courses going, we upgrade them, we improve them. We're moving things on all the time. So Sam, if you're going to do it, click on the... which one, Kevin, would you mind just popping back on? It's that's the
is it on your website, the link?
Right, yeah, if you can get it on there as well. If you go to www.gradebusters.co.uk,
yeah,
I tell you what I'm going to do, Sam. You can see my screen, can't you?
Yeah.
Hang on, let me just share my screen with you so you know what you're looking for. Here we go. Let me just share. Sorry, it's taking me a little while just to work out here what I'm doing. Here we go. Right, Sam, have a look at this. This is the page that you are... Oh, here we go. There we go. That's the page you're looking for, okay?
Okay.
So, you can either go on that link, which is heidi-mcginty.squarespace.com/shop. The reason I'm reading it out is because... some of the video people's faces might be over some of it.
I've just taken a picture of it, so I've got it. So I'll just go on.
You're ahead of the times, my girl, aren't you, with your technology?
Well, not quite.
So, as you can see, you've got the Kickstart, which is the one you're thinking about, which is 2 modules. You'll get 14 videos there with that one. On the Kickstart, you'll get only 1 Zoom call a week, okay? That's the significant difference, because obviously we Kick It On, it's moved on quite, we're moving the pace on, so 2 weekly calls might be needed. But with your one, the Kickstart, that would be 1 call a week. And of course, you have access to a private Facebook thing, and also comes with an accountability document, so you can click off everything you're doing so you don't get left behind.
Okay.
Sam, and let me and don't forget as well the resources as well. That's what you get. You get your A3 grid and store. You get 100 counters, 20 half counters, 40 counters in your handy bag. Okay, okay.
Perfect.
I hope that helped, Sam. Sam, did you have any other questions or anything at all that?
No, I think that's fine. I mean, I really just need to get his confidence up, and I know, I'm hoping some of that stuff in there is going to be too basic for him. But if it helps to get his confidence, then I'd rather just go over it again. So that's kind of where I am, because it's no confidence in the whole thing. So but that's because he doesn't understand it. So
yeah, Sam, do you know, the other parent I've got, Karen, a lady, what you're saying is exactly how she felt, but her children are now older. So even though they're in secondary school, I'm bringing them right back to the basics, and she's starting to witness things that have been overlooked. So, for example, the way he's rushing through things, because of the way we teach, they have to do it in a very careful process. And she's beginning to identify, even though he's 12 years old, he's missing out significant understanding. Just like he doesn't know what the addition symbol or the subtraction or equal symbol's telling him to do. He is confused. And that's at the age of 12. And this is an intelligent boy I'm talking about. He's a clever boy. His potential is incredible. But somewhere along the way, he's been lost and left behind. So, Sam, you know, what you're saying, I hear from many, many parents. You're not on your own with this. So, Sam, the sooner you do this, then I can get him up and running for you. Okay? We're here to walk with you. We're here to show you the way and hold your hand. I want you to feel supported. I want you to know that we're here for you. Okay, Sam?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Heidi. Thank you.
Hi, Helen. Helen, did you want to jump in or say anything, my dear? Don't feel you have to if you want to.
Hi.
Hi, Helen.
Hello.
Hi, Helen. So how did you hear about this webinar? Was it through Facebook, or were you on our email list?
It was through Facebook, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't have any kids, but my brother has a 5-year-old, so
okay.
I struggled with maths a lot, so I think you know, I'm really keen to make sure that my nephew doesn't go through the same kind of thing, and yeah, I'm just interested to find out a bit more.
Helen, what a gorgeous sister you are. You're an amazing
auntie. I'm lovely.
But what an amazing auntie you are to be that supportive about your brother's children. I think that's incredible. I think you're amazing. Yeah. Well, no, it's incredibly thoughtful. And that's what I say to people. I say, look, if you know, you might not be interested in this stuff, but you might know somebody else who can. You know, it's all about sharing the love. And that's what I'm about. I don't mind whose child it is. I just want their children to feel brilliant and know that they can do it. And that's the greatest gift. If we can pass that on to another child, then you know what? It's worth me being here, I think. So, yeah. And 5 years old, Helen, is kind of ideal, really, because you're kind of coaching them before it all kind of, you know, they've had so much exposure, they're kind of like, so the earlier you can catch them, in some ways the easier it is. And of course, it's also relationship building. You know, if your brother's going to be doing it with them, you know, what's so powerful as well, I know I'm talking about academic learning here, but the way we structure our program is the way the parents can connect with their child. I hear many parents, once their children are 13, 14, 15, they say to me, Heidi, I can't reach, how do I reach my child now? You know, she or he won't listen to what I'm saying. But if we start this early, the connection between the parent and the child through this process, you know, the child can see how much the parent values not just what they're learning, but values the time with them. And it's, you know, and the child just feels so important. And, you know, that's all part of the package. You know, it's not just about academic, it's that whole emotional well-being. So Helen, tell us about your brother's children. Did you say, are they both? They're not twins. One's 5 and how old are they?
No, just 1, 5.
Oh, yeah. Just 1 5-year-old. Yeah. Okay. Is it a boy or a girl?
Boy.
You see, the other thing is, me having boys myself, boys tend to be need to be a lot more active as well. And the way the course has been designed, it's been designed in very short, you know, manageable little steps so that the child doesn't become overwhelmed. And that's really important. I know with my own sons, very often you're better off doing 15 minutes every now and then, because otherwise, if you just do it for hours, it becomes a chore. The child runs out of patience. The child just feels like, you know, so the way our program designed is particularly good for boys and girls as well. But of course, for boys that, you know, they quick and move off, you know, is better for them. Short, to the point, and move on.